December 14th will commemorate the birth date of Hiram Grant Moss, the grandfather of Susan, Richard, David, Wade, Jeff, Brett, Barbara, Jill, and Janet. The following are facts and excerpts from Gramp's personal history. Born December 14, 1907, the second child of Joseph Henry Moss and Dorcas Rowena Debenham in their home on 1150 East, 4500 South. Gramp's earliest memories are while he was living in the Wilford Ward area. He attended the first 5 grades at Wilford School, located on Highland Drive. He has vivid memories of being a deacon in the Wilford Ward. Those days there was no piped water, and in order to get the water for the sacrament, he would have to go across the street to the bishop and get it out of the ditch. In wintertime, the water would freeze, so he'd have to go to the neighbors and pump it out of their well. Everywhere as a young boy he would go, he had to walk. There was a streetcar that would come occasionally from town on tracks. This gave him an opportunity for some mischief. Gramp wrote that he and Cliff Gunn would put pieces of wood on the tracks and derail the streetcar that came by and then run off. Gramp said he hung out at the grocery store the White brothers owned on 33rd South and Highland Drive regularly. Next to the store was a pharmacy where he and the druggist, Sam Cornwell, would mix potash and sulfur together to create some type of a homemade bomb. One night they put it on the streetcar and went into Mutual. Gramp said when the car ran over the concoction, it sounded like a stick of dynamite, and you could hear it all over town. He also wrote that he was never caught. In the wintertime as a boy, they would go sleigh riding down 33rd South. He would start at 23rd East and sleigh all the way down to 9th East to Roosevelt Junior High, where he went to school. In the summertime, he dug dandelions at the Wasatch Lawn Cemetery, and he worked at his uncle's service station on 33rd South. And he would also help Matt White in the grocery store delivering groceries by horse and wagon. Many times, Gramp went with Ken White and Cliff Gunn in a loaded wagon with fishing and camping gear and rode up over Parley Summit and down East Canyon and would stay a week to fish. One night while fishing, he heard a noise and looked up, and there was a mountain lion staring him down. He said he froze, and he spent the rest of the night in the wagon. Not being many homes in the area, he would go hunting for rabbits and pheasants. He said he got turned in one time for tin canning dogs, and he said he knew the old biddy that turned him in. He also got turned into the Humane Society for turpentining cats, and was chased out of watermelon patches at gunpoint on a regular basis. When the family moved to 23rd East and Evergreen Avenue, this is when Gramp started attending Granite High. He was elected president of the sophomore class of 1924. This is where he also went out for football and wanted to be quarterback. He recalls running with the ball, and some big senior rung his bell, and he was carried off the field. From that point on, he hung up his shoes and never attempted it again. Gramp went to high school for 4 years and sloughed most of the time. His dad went to high school one day wanting to talk to Grant, and the principal tried to locate him. Grant hadn't been to school for 6 months. He left the school with no diploma. However, he said the reason why he sloughed so much was to help a beautiful tall girl named Cornelia White, who was a graduate of LDS High, in the grocery store of which she was working. That relationship grew, and they got the bug to get married. He told Connie that if she wanted to marry him, that she would have to speak with his dad. So one night they knocked on the door to see Gramp's dad. When he came to the door, Gramp disappeared and left Connie standing there by herself. She asked for his hand in marriage, and with some advice from Gramp's dad, he said, "If you want to get married, but move away from me and your mother-in-law as far as you can." Gramp's dad walked back into the house. Gramp said they were so broke when they got married that he had to borrow $5 from Connie for the marriage license. They married in the Salt Lake Temple, and the reception was at the Wilford Ward. All the food was donated by a salesman that called on Connie at the grocery store. Gramp said that they don't have one picture of their wedding as a result of being so broke. Mary Cornelia White was born January 29, 1908, to Mohanrai M. White and Mary Dot Stay. They lived in the old pioneer home on Bosham Lane. When Grandma was a young girl, she had to work extremely hard. Her mother's health wasn't good, so she was left with the heavy burden of helping Grandma raise her brothers and sisters and doing most of the work. Grandma too attended Wilford School and Roosevelt Junior High, but went on to LDS High School and graduated in the class of 1925. Gramps said that one day, when he was going with Matt White delivering groceries, they had to stop at Mahonri's house and happened to see Cornelia out in the yard working. Matt asked him, "How would you like to marry her?" Gramps shook his head and said, "She would be the last person I would marry because she's always in the same old clothes." She had to do all the housework, and Gramp remembers one knit dress that she had to wear for over 2 years because she wouldn't ask her father to buy a new one. You see, great-grandfather White had to work so hard for the little that they had. Grant and Connie's first home was on 3151 South and 20th East. There was no running water, and they had an old outhouse out back. It had a small kitchen, a tiny living room, and a pint-sized bedroom. They had no car, so they had to walk or take the streetcar each day to work. Grandma worked at the United Groceries, and Gramp worked for J.C. Penney's, 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. From their 20th East rental home, they relocated to 9th South and 9th East. Grandma continued working for United Grocery, and Gramp started working for Western States Grocery at $11.75 per week, working those same long hours. Gramp wrote that this was a very difficult time as a result of the Depression. Men were lined up for his job, and working long hours were essential if he wanted to keep it. Eventually, long hours would get to the both of them. So Grandma said that we were going to start their own business, and we'll invite Gwen and Vaughn to join us. So in March of 1947, they quit their jobs, moved into the Pioneer Home, and started a catering business, and started building a new home on Melbourne Street. And the official partnership with the Wimmers began January 1st, 1951, and lasted 26 years until the death of Grandma. Gramp dissolved their partnership on January 1st, 1970. At the age of 40, Gramp weighed over 220 pounds on his short 5'4" frame. After seeing what being overweight did to his father, he decided to go to work on himself. The Deseret Gym, the running track, biking up 33rd South, and controlling his diet was now his new lifestyle. Over time, Gramp ended up running 1,200 miles every year and weighing 125 pounds. The distinctive catering started in the home of Claire Campbell's basement. Grandpa said that Grandma was the business head, that she was the one with all the ideas. She was the one that secured its profitability. After a fire in the Campbell's basement, they built a duplex shell on the back of Wimmer's property. That became the new home for the distinctive catering service, and under the supervision of Connie Moss, our grandmother, hundreds of people over the years were employed, including all of her grandchildren. Because the business was going strong, Grant and Connie took time out for a yearly vacation. On January 1st, 1952, they were catering a job at Fort Douglas on the university campus. At noon, Gramp told Grandma that they were going to take a trip but didn't say where. They arrived home at 3:30 p.m. and Gramp revealed that Honolulu was their destination. Grandma was packed within 10 minutes, and they left for a month-long vacation to Honolulu, Hawaii. They went every year until Grandma passed away, 21 trips in all. Some of their children and other friends and family joined them periodically on their adventures. Their last trip together was in January 1969. Grandma was very ill, and Gramp had to talk to the doctors into letting him take her one last time. Their Hawaiian friends greeted them at the airport and had a wheelchair waiting. All that Grandma could do was to lay in bed for 3 weeks that they were there. Even though she hardly said a word, Gramp said that she was very happy to be in her beloved Hawaii one last time. It was a struggle getting home with delays, airplane engine troubles, and a non-scheduled layover in San Francisco. But when they arrived in Salt Lake City, Mom and Dad, Peggy and Marlo, were waiting and had a room reserved for her at the hospital. She never returned home again. Grandma passed away on February 6, 1969. Grandma wrote in her one-page history that she had the most wonderful husband in the world. After Grandma's passing, Gramp dedicated his time doing temple work and spending 3 hours a day on his health and spending time with his family. At the end of March of 1981, Gramp had done the initiatory work for over 35,000 individuals and 2,500 endowments. Hiram Grant Moss was truly one of God's unique children. He brought the joy of heaven into numerous lives and touched all of us with his enthusiasm, his humor, and his love. His generous heart knew no bounds, and to sit at his feet was a cherished experience. He said it best when he proclaimed that money could not buy what he possessed, for he had the love of God for all of us. May we pause and give him thought at this time of year, and may God bless this family.
Together at Christmas time, be a really blessing for us as a family.
And the Lord said unto Moses, come forth, and he come fifth and won the sixth prize.
That's right, Moses.
Heavenly sun,
Heavenly sunshine, heavenly sunshine, hallelujah, Jesus is mine.
what more?
Heavenly sunshine, heavenly sunshine, flooding my soul with glory divine. Heavenly sunshine,